Hey, how's it going, everyone? Can you guys hear me?
Can hear you.
Hey, good to hear you there, Steve. I think we got a few folks from your class joining, and like I say, we'll get started here in a little bit. I'm trying not to wait here too long.
Sounds good.
Hey, how's it going, Kristen?
It's good. I'd be better if the Brewer game wasn't tied right now, but
Oh no. Okie doke. I'm gonna go ahead and get in touch here with Aaron quick, and we'll be good to go here. I think in a little bit we just gotta get a few more folks potentially here. Everyone's joining here at the last
Okay.
minute, it seems like. But
Sounds great.
yeah, we'll go ahead and put together a quick roster here. Yeah, everyone's joining here. How's it going, Lewis? Okay, we got Ann here as well. Okay, are you there, Aaron?
Yep, I'm here.
Okie doke. I was planning on getting the start here right at 8 o'clock, so we don't keep folks here too late. So far, we got a handful of people here. They're gonna be ready to get going. And Aaron, did you want to go ahead and put together a quick roster of what order you want folks to go in first? Or does anybody on the call here have a preference and want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, we got Steve, and then we got Ann, Kristen, and Lewis. So.
Oh, I'm not going to present anything. I was just going to sit in and listen, if that's okay.
Oh, okay. I see how it is. Okay, no, that's
Sorry.
fine.
I hope that was allowed.
Nope, perfectly fine.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you want me to get going?
Let's give it maybe 2 more minutes here if we can, because we got a few folks joining here. Just want to make sure we try to get everybody in here.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you going first here, sir.
I figure that's worth what, about 50 bonus points, or
It's an automatic A. You don't have to do any more assignments, is what I heard. That's the
perfect.
rumor. I don't know
Done.
if that's true or not.
Hey, trade the rumor, baby.
There you go. Okay, after Steve goes here, Aaron here at the top of the hour, do you want to go ahead and just orchestrate the rest of the folks, maybe by random order? And then I'd mark Kristen as well as, attended here if possible.
Sure thing, you got it.
Okay.
I'm thinking we'll do Steve, Ann, and then Lewis, if that is okay with everyone.
Okay, sounds good to me. So Aaron, I'll go ahead and let you kick it off here and say anything else, unless we want Steve to go here.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I don't really have too much to say, but why don't you jump right in, Steve? Thank you.
All right, I assume I could share my screens, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so let's see if this works. Do you guys see that?
Yep, we are good to go here, Steve.
You can see my screen. Okay, so what I'm going to demonstrate is the Bloomberg trading system. You guys are not in the finance industry. This is kind of the de facto software that probably sits on every trader and salesperson's desk, both on Wall Street and within investment management firms. Started by Michael Bloomberg, ex-presidential candidate, way back in the 80s. And this thing just basically dominates the financial space. So generally Bloomberg, in its core, you bring up like these 4 windows, which you can put different stuff in. But what I'm going to sort of demonstrate is how you might trade an equity option. By background, I've been trading derivatives for 27 years. And so I thought I'd walk you through what might go through my head if someone asked me to price an equity call option. In this case, Apple Computers, AAPL. So what we're going to look at is a call option that gives you the right but not the obligation to buy a security in the future. I'm going to look at the point of view from the buy side. So what's the risk look like if you buy this? We're going to price it at a strike price of 140. That's the price at which we agree that the owner of the option can exercise the right and purchase the stock. And right now, Apple is trading at 141. So this is what we call slightly in the money. It's about 1% in the money. And it's going to expire on January 21st of 2022. Listed options tend to expire on the third Friday of every month. So you'll hear people talk about expiration Friday. 4 times a year, you'll have equity options, futures, index options, kind of the whole thing. The whole world expires at once. So sometimes you'll hear the term triple witching or quadruple witching. That's the third Friday of the month. And then some other stuff, things we input to an option. So right now, if I were to sell this model is telling me that the price of this option is $9. Okay. Now I can make that price change by saying a couple different things. Like let's say that, the underlying Apple computer was trading at 145. You can see this option just got more expensive. Other things that are going to make an option more expensive are its volatility. So right now that's 27. If I were to make that 30, you can see that price goes up, right? So now what's happening is that as a customer is asking me, potentially as a market maker, hey, sell you this option, we talk in terms of number of contracts, right? So, one option, you tend to, that controls 100 shares. So we see down here, like one contract. That's why you have this multiplier. So it's sort of $11.56 a share, but it's about $1,156 outright. This is an important number right here, delta. This sort of tells me if I have to go hedge this thing, approximately how much stock do I have to buy or sell to replicate this option? So in this case, it's going to be 61%. So if I sell one contract, I'm going to have to go and buy 61 shares. Now I've traded Apple like where you sell 1 million contracts, or I'm sorry, take that back, 10,000 contracts where you might have to trade 1 million shares. Now that sounds like a big number. That's actually not for Apple. Within Bloomberg, you can look at other things. For example, today, like volume at price, right? We can see here, Apple probably traded 65 million shares today. So for me to go and say that, oh, I've got to go buy 1 million shares, that's actually not such a big deal, right? So it's really more timing on how quickly I think I could do that and how much disruption can have on the market, how much bid offer spread I have to add into this as I make that market. And this thing has some nice little things in it. Like I could go look at what the volatility surface looks like. This is a 3D approximation. It kind of shows the strike price in moneyness terms. And I know most people don't know what that means. Don't worry about it. And kind of what the volatility looks like for that moneyness. And then you could do it out through time. You see here 1 month, 6 weeks, so on and so forth. And then different levels of graphs, volatility versus the term, or moneyness versus volatility. I mean, really, there's just no end to how much data you can sort of pull out of this thing. And even when you think about Apple, if you want to say, well, tell me something about Apple, you could get quickly, well, what's the float outstanding? What's their dividend yield? Who runs the company? And you can even see things like, okay, where's this stock been over, say, the last year, the last 5 years, and its maximum chart. Again, we all wish we sort of bought this thing when it cost $1.77 way back in 2006, and it's now $141. So I'm going to stop there. I think I just hit my 5-minute allocation and want to see if there's any quick questions that I could answer.
Do you have to pay for that?
Oh yeah, this thing is not cheap. There's a user's fee that everyone pays. My firm pays it, I don't pay it, but it is not cheap. I probably am not supposed to disclose the price, but this is definitely a subscription service. And Michael Bloomberg had a lot of money to spend on his campaign. This is a a very lucrative business, just given that everyone has to have it on their desktop if you sort of wish to compete in this industry.
Good answer.
Any other questions?
Is that just like a news ticker on the bottom?
Yeah, it's a news ticker. I mean, you kind of all day long, you will kind of watch the news. So actually here we got Apple made the top one. So Apple poised to slash iPhone production, but all day long, you see this news ticking, and you could set it for, different time periods, different things you want to look at, different, any way you want to set this up. So a lot of traders, there's actually, Bloomberg has a much more built out interface where you don't have to just look at these 4 windows. You could bring up many, many windows. So most traders and salespeople build certain views that they flip between all day long. And a lot of those views generally are news feeds that you're looking at. So you'll see at the bottom, this thing is kind of clicking down all day long. And sometimes something will catch your mind. And if you're lucky, you can click it and then you go right to the story and go from there. A lot of times, like for stocks, you might pull up a name and then you can look at the news on that day. So this is all the Apple news that you might see on that day. So this is not good. Apple first MacBook Pro revamp. I just bought a MacBook Pro for my wife, who's a physician. So looks like my purchase was a little early. I literally just bought this 2 weeks ago. So too bad, I'm missing the new model. But yeah, I mean, it can be kind of addictive. And, again, the rumors, everything that happens in the world will hit this software set, this new service, and it's kind of what really drives the investment business.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Anne, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I am going to do my presentation on Google BigQuery today, or Google Cloud Platform and Google BigQuery. This is the dashboard for Google Cloud Platform, and this is my homepage. So I'm going to talk about my project, this particular one. And what I did to start this project is that they have a marketplace of data sets, which is very handy. And I happen to use the New York Times COVID data set for this project. So it came right up here, but there, as you can see, there are many, many, many to search from. And I had picked this for my 434 class because it was in the fall after COVID, fall of 2020, after COVID came out, and there was starting to be lots and lots of data out there on this. So then in the BigQuery section, and over on the left here, we have the menu, and I am in the part that says Google BigQuery. At least it did a couple minutes ago. Here we are. So this is my SQL workspace in here. And what I have here is, this is where I set my project name, the data set that I pulled in, and underneath this, I created 2 models, both ARIMA models, one for cases and one for deaths, and a data set, which is actually a view, a query saved as a view for daily cases and deaths. So if I wanted to just take a look at what the raw data set looked like, just getting the top 1,000 rows for this. And we can see that this is for Texas, and it's way back in the beginning when they first started gathering data. And it's accumulative. How many deaths or cases were on that particular day by state? So then in order to get my data set to use, I had to extract, here we are. I had to subtract. So I had to take one day forward, what are the cases and deaths, and minus the previous day. to get the number of deaths or cases for that particular day. And that is what this query is doing. And it's being saved into the daily cases and deaths view. So this runs every day, and I've got scheduled, and unfortunately the screen sharing's in the way. I scheduled that query along with 2 others that create my models. So I've got a deaths ARIMA model, and I've got a cases ARIMA model. And those are created again with a query that runs every single day. And this is the really nice part about Google, that they've got these machine learning models. So this particular one is an ARIMA model, but they have other models such as regression models and clustering models, etc. And you don't have to program anything in Python. You just put it in a query and it creates the model with the data that I'm pulling out from my daily cases and deaths. So I did that both for the deaths and the cases. So this is create cases, and this is more create cases, and I think I've got create deaths over here. So then I scheduled them to run every single day because I wanted to produce a page from this. And as a matter of fact, so this runs every single day. And here is my GitHub Flask code that queries these models and puts it out into an HTML page. And you can see that it queries the deaths model, and it's 0.8 at the confidence level. And I grabbed all of this code pretty much out on the internet. It's just available there, and you can play with it a little bit, but it was really, really easy. No Python involved with this. Well, actually very little Python involved. Not like this is the Python for the main page, but it's not like as if you had to go back to here and create these models in Python. And then the end product is this web page that I have that refreshes every single day, and it tells you what the current cases are and the predicted cases 30 days out, the current deaths, and the predicted deaths 30 days out. And every day I can go out here to this URL, and that's my project number, and it automatically refreshes. And the other nice thing about this is I have gotten a lot of mileage out of this particular setup. Query history. If I look at the query history, and after I got through 434 last term over the summer, I took the visualization course, and so we had to do a bunch of visuals in Python. And instead of taking down files and manipulating with Excel, I just pulled queries, reran queries against my daily cases and deaths, or sometimes against the original data set, where I got certain group bys I needed or other things in order to create visualized charts, which was the goal of the class, create charts in Python. So it made it very, very easy to take some of this data and do heat maps by state, do bar charts of highest and lowest 5 states at a certain point in time, or a cluster where I showed over 30 days the shift and change of the red states and the blue states, and how much they increased cases when the Delta variant came out, etc. Are there any questions?
So are you keeping track of how accurate your ARIMA models are? Like how well is it forecasting?
Yes and no. I don't make it a point to go out there and look, but what I have done is, if I haven't looked at this on a particular browser, I've got it on my phone, I've got it on my desktop, I've got it on the laptop, and sometimes I'll go out and I haven't refreshed the page in a couple of weeks or a month, and I'll take a look at it. And it's not bad, but of course a lot depends on what is happening. If like right before the Delta variant hit, things were on a downtrend.
Right.
So when the Delta variant hit, obviously this doesn't, take that, it can't take this into account. And so my prediction was down compared to what was actually happening. But other than that, for the most part, when things are moving steady, then yeah, it's pretty decent for the amount of effort I put into it.
It's got a pretty
Considering
grim November forecast there. And deaths.
Yeah.
Well, remember, that's for all of the United States and territories.
Oh yeah, I'm being a little facetious. I mean, compared to today is 1154, and then it's gonna, go up by like 700 in a month. Let's hope not.
Yes, but if deaths have been trending upward lately, and I think they have been going slightly upward now that school has started, more people are exposed, Delta variant, actually that's not nearly as frightening as when those numbers were in the 10,000s a couple months ago.
Fair enough.
And so, here's where I schedule my queries. They automatically run it every day. The green tells me that it ran no problem. And this thing's been on autopilot, since last fall.
It's cool.
Hey, and you can also connect BigQuery directly to Data Studio, right? If you wanted to do some visualizations there.
Yes, I have done that. It's called Exploring Your Data. Trying to remember how I used to get there. But yes, you can. Do you remember how to get there?
I actually have gone into it mostly from the other direction, from Google Data Studio. So I haven't spent a lot of time in GCP yet, or in BigQuery.
Yeah, there is a way of doing that. I've always gone from this direction, but I didn't spend a lot of time in Data Studio. So I'm very sorry. I did not review that for this.
I was just curious. Because I was working on some Google Data Studio reports today. Thank you.
Hey, if I can chime in here real quick, I just noticed we had a bunch of folks in the waiting room. So those folks that just joined, sorry for the wait, and thank you for joining us here.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
All right, it looks like it may be my turn. So I'm going to still the screen. And
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you really quickly.
yep.
Is there anyone who just joined who is not going to be presenting? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. And go ahead, Louis. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. All right, so first, what I want to do, just kind of do a quick little presentation I put together, and it's essentially exploring the option of using Go for data science. For those of you who may be new to the language or not familiar with it, because I myself am also new to the language, Go was essentially designed by Google to solve Google-sized problems. So, they wanted something that had the speed, but yet the readability of Python, and that's kind of where Go is birthed out of. And in my opinion, it does just that, but it is one of the newer languages that means it has some challenges, right? There's a learning curve with it. Specifically, I'm interested, or I think everyone should be interested in learning Go for these three reasons here, which is concurrency, speed, and what I like to call hardware ignorant solutions. For concurrency, just kind of think of if you've ever went through the problem of setting up a data pipeline or grabbing data from a website or doing some web scraping. Once you get into those bigger volumes of data, things tend to slow down. If you're using something that, such as Python, that actually steps through your code and do things one at a time. Of course, you can leverage something such as Spark or Airflow, but that does require you to kind of get familiar with a different environment altogether. And with Go, you kind of get concurrency right out of the language. As soon as you download it and set it up, you already can run a concurrent, or you can actually leverage concurrency in your programming solutions. Next is, of course, speed. Go is written to have comparable speeds to C, while at the exact same time being readable, such as Python. I think it's a really easy language to read and actually interpret when you're looking over the code. So that's something I think is really interesting. And then, of course, hardware ignorant solutions, which is just to say when you develop a solution, you're not necessarily pinned down to the hardware that it's going to run on. Best example I can think of is something like Power BI needing to be present on the end user system, or they need access to Power BI in order to view your solution. With Go, because there is a native tendency essentially to develop web applications, you can quickly get a web server up and running and even build out a binary to deploy out a website, much like you can run Jupyter Lab from your command line. You can also run a Go binary that pulls up a web browser from your command line as well. So with that, it's kind of good to go over some of the cons with Go. There's a small user community. There's not a lot of individuals using the language. There is a lack of libraries. Now, those of us who've actually explored Go will quickly say, well, no, there's a lot of libraries out there. The problem is that these libraries aren't being maintained or kept up, or they're really early in development, so you can't really use them in anything that's ready for production. And because of the smaller user communities and the lack of libraries, you tend to get longer development times. And due to the nature of data science, we're not necessarily hired to program. We're more so necessary to hire to answer questions. So, spending a lot of your time just on writing your code could impact your work. Lastly, I create this visual that just kind of summarize all of everything that I just went over. I can for sure share with anyone. It gives you a quick comparison on what it would look like to open up a CSV using Go versus Python. And as well, a little more of these other statistics or stats that I was able to pull up. And in conclusion, I think Go has a promising future just right now due to the lack of libraries, and also the fact that there aren't any data scientists really using Go in production at the moment. I think it'd be better to just stick with Python, but I do think Go does deserve at least to be explored. Last thing I want to show is just some code I have written, I think over the last week or so, that does the basics of essentially opening up a CSV, printing out the head, the tail, and then also providing your summary stats. So to run any Go script or code that you may create, you just run go run main.go, or the name of your code.go. And doing that, essentially what I have here is the head of the data, the tail of the data, and then I went ahead and also created a summary table. I can share the code. There's a lot going on here. For example, the summary table is doing quite a bit. But what we end up here is something that, if I was to actually time it, is on some cases, I want to say somewhere between 20 to 30 times faster than Python with the exact same data set, which, in most cases, it may not matter to the end user, but when you're dealing with really large data sets, that can actually add up quite quickly. And instead of getting too deep into the weeds on the code and everything else here, I'm just going to open it up for questions because I'm pretty sure I'm close to my 5-minute mark, if not over.
Are there any questions for Louis?
I like your infographic. Very nice. And your pros and cons.
Yeah, it's great summary.
Yeah, I think it's a promising language. It's just it needs time to mature, and of course, individuals actually want to explore it for data science and other applications that isn't necessarily back-end related.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing.
Okay,
I found the data visualization if you want to see it.
sure, Anne, why don't you bring that back up for us?
My mistake was that you have to be in a window where the query is run and you've got data. And then it's as easy as Explore Data, opens Data Studio. And the query that I have, it doesn't really lend itself because it doesn't have that much, but
Right. Okay.
you know, you could build the visualization from here is the point, that you need to be where you have data from the query, and it's as simple as Explore Data.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Erin, if you'll go next, please.
I'm assuming there's no other errands in the. Oh, there's.
No, right, I'm the Erin talking. Erin Tellis, if you'll go next, please.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. There we go. All right. Yeah, I didn't really prepare much before this, but I just kind of wanted to share with you guys a pretty cool website that I found recently. It's called ImportYeti. And it's an organization that was able to, through the Freedom of Information Act, it's an organization that was able to kind of get all the custom sea shipment records from companies who are ordering things from international. And basically, they're able to group it all together by company so that people can kind of look around and see how organizations are interacting with international businesses. Kind of like a look into their supply chain. So like this has, you're able to look up like Nike, a company like Nike, you know, it's Oregon, so it's probably Nike, and then look at their shipments over time. But then it also gives you some more granular information lower down here from specific suppliers that Nike is using. And like the amount that they're receiving from this supplier. And if you scroll down some more, it'll show you just some cool visuals of like getting more granular data about all the specifics of what they're having shipped. And then some specifics on who are some of their main vendors. An interesting aspect about this website as well is that, well, it gives you a lot of visualizations, first of all, which I think is pretty cool. But then also you can kind of see down to who they're using as their suppliers. If you click on theirs, you can see who else they're supplying in the United States. They do give you a lot of these like pop-ups, but they're just asking for money because they're doing this all for free. But yeah, so you can also view the suppliers who are supplying these American companies, and you can see like, oh wow, so Adidas, Nike, and Reebok, Puma are all using some of the same suppliers. And over time, you can see how their shipments are coming in. I think what was interesting is if you look at some companies too, I feel like it was kind of funny when I was just looking because around 2016, there was a bit of a dip in the amount of shipments. I don't know if it was Lululemon. Let's see. I saw this in a number of US companies, but it looked like around like 2016. Yeah, there's a bit of a drop off of imports from these international shippers. And looking at the last administration, I think that may have something to do with this dip off and then kind of like rebound. And then you see it dip off too, probably because of COVID. So yeah, it's just like a cool data source that I found, ImportYeti. Yeah, that's all I have to really say about it.
Any questions for Aaron? Okay, thank you so much. Douglas Hickey, you're up next.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I'm getting a cannot share screen while other participant is sharing. So I don't know if other Aaron, if you can unshare your screen.
Aaron, tell us. Okay, thanks.
Cool. All right, let me.
Hold on here 1 second. I changed the setting. Let me go ahead and change it back here again. So, okay, go ahead. You're good to go now. Thank you.
Okay. Give me just a second here. Sorry, this is having some technical difficulties here on this end. So I don't know if you wanted to like switch me for or like go with somebody else for a second while I sort this out, just so we're not dead air.
Okay, Alisa, your turn, please.
Okay, great. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, cool. So I was trying to decide whether I wanted to do it on how I got my current job or some cool NLP code that I discovered when I was taking our NLP class. And then I realized I could put those both together. So here goes. So this has been the dream for me, a full-time job in NYC. I lived and worked in NYC from 1998 to 2011. And then I took a job out in Red Bank, New Jersey. So now I'm out here on the Jersey Shore, which is awesome, but I'm only a ferry ride away from the city. So I wanted to get back to the city. So what happened was I lost my job because of COVID-19. Surprise, surprise. And it gave me deja vu back to 2009 when I got laid off after the stock market crash. I had been working for a supplier then that was a software as a service company with big ticket licenses. And after the stock market crash, our business pipeline dried up. So I've been through it before, and I focused on looking for a job, a full-time job. When I was unemployed this past year and a half, I got on my computer at 9 o'clock in the morning and stayed there till 5, filling out applications and doing things like that. I filled out 291 applications and got 5 interviews, got close, but I didn't get a job. And I got a rejection email today for a job that I applied to back in April. So I guess those will keep cycling in little by little. So now let me jump over to NLP. So NLP was my favorite class, and I did a paper on using NLP to automatically code verbatim survey answers. So my previous job, I was doing survey research for a company that does trade shows and conferences and live events, which is why as soon as COVID happened, their business disappeared and we all got laid off. So the verbatim survey responses are those open-ended questions in a survey that you get to type in your response. And so if you're conducting a survey, you've got like 1,000, 1,500 responses, and maybe you have 4 or 5 of those questions in there. That means you have a lot of text that you're trying to summarize. And we have been doing it manually. Like when I left, that's how we did that. So I found the Bert extractive summarizer. It's part of PyPy. I think you say that. And it's really easy. So the developer of it had a bunch of lectures that he wanted to summarize. And so he didn't want to just, summarize like what was mentioned most frequently or things like that. He wanted to get the key points of the lecture. So he embedded the entire sentences. So not just a word, not phrases, but entire sentences were embedded. And then he ran the clustering algorithm. And it gives you some decent summarization. So, and he made it very easy to use. You just pretty much download it and put in the text that you want to summarize, run the summarizer, and it will pop back however many sentences that you specify. Like I specified, I think like 4 or 5 sentences for my summaries, and it worked really well. It came out similar to what the result we would have gotten if we'd done it by hand. So I was very excited about that. So then part of what I did when I was looking for a job was watch webinars on anything and everything. So shortly after NLP class, this webinar popped up about transforming social data into predictive insight using NLP on social media data. So I was like, well, that's kind of cool. And I attended the webinar and I contacted the presenter afterwards through LinkedIn. And I just told them, I thought it was really cool what they were doing. I had just finished an NLP class and I was just excited about the work, and that's it. He contacted me right back on LinkedIn and asked me if I was looking for a job. So I was like, yeah. So yeah, I got the job. So exciting. I'm like, yay, success. So I think a lot of advice that I had been seeing when I was out there looking for a job was that you can't just rely on the traditional things like filling out applications. You really need to work your network and get out there and meet people, because people hire you, right? So as we know, your application goes into algorithms, which may or may not have the right keywords to get your application in front of a human being. So it's really, really difficult to break through that. And one of the ways that had been recommended to me as a way to get a job was to just look around on LinkedIn or whatever, find something that you thought was really interesting, follow it, follow the people, make comments, just get to know people instead of just, like saying, oh my God, I need a job. So that is my share with you today on both getting a job and NLP.
That was a great story, Alisa. Thank you. Does anyone have questions?
Thank you for sharing, Alisa. I appreciate that. I think everyone could see some very good insights from that. So thank you for sharing that. Very personal there.
You bet.
All righty, Douglas, you want to try again?
Yeah, let's see. I just learned something about being able to share screens through Zoom on a Mac that I feel like I could do a tutorial on now. But
All right.
All right, let's see. You tell me if you're getting my screen here.
Yep, there you are.
All right, awesome. So this is going to be maybe kind of a flip side to what Alisa just talked about. I wanted to talk a little bit about seeking federal employment as a government data scientist. And I think that if you've never worked in the public sector before or worked for the federal government, the process of breaking in is maybe a little bit abstruse and difficult to negotiate. So I'm hoping that folks will find this helpful. Just a little bit about my background. I've been a civil servant since 2014. And during that time, I've occupied several different roles within the federal government and sat on multiple hiring panels and done, you know, a lot of hiring recommendations. So that's kind of my basis for what I'm going to talk about here. And just as a quick upfront, I guess question answered, why would someone want to work for the federal government? Because I think it's pretty well known that salary wise, you're not going to be able to compete in the public space with what you can get working for some of these firms in the Bay Area and the private sector. But I would say that a big thing that the federal government offers that none of these others do is the fact that you get to work in data sets that simply don't exist anywhere else. And just as a single example of this, a friend of mine took a job working for JIDO, which is the Joint Improvised Threat Defeat Organization. So basically what he was doing was analyzing IED attacks in Afghanistan and Iraq and trying to create a model that would allow them to allow the government to identify locations and times of day and patterns of activity that constituted high risk scenarios, so that commanders in the field could take mitigating actions. And again, it's the sort of thing that probably there's nowhere else that you're going to get to dig into that kind of data and play around with it. So I think particularly for people going through this program, federal employment is something that they might want to consider just for the novelty and uniqueness of the problem sets. A couple notes up quick about pay stuff, because again, this is something that I think if you're not already familiar is going to seem a little bit weird. But the way that the federal government does pay, so generally speaking, if you're a federal civilian, you're going to be something called a general scheduled employee. And the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, has organized basically all different federal civilian jobs into 15 different grades based on difficulty and level of responsibility, with GS1 being at the low end of that scale and then GS15 being at the highest. And positions are designated then as one of those grades. So if you're applying for a data science position coming out of grad school, more likely than not, you're going to be looking at something in the GS12 to GS14 range. And then as long as you're in that position, you will always be that grade. So if you're hired for a GS13 role, you're never not going to be a GS13 unless you apply for some other job that is a different grade. The way that pay increases work is that there's 10 steps within each of those grades. And typically you'll start as a step 1, and based on your longevity in that position, you will then graduate up to the next step in the pay grade. And that happens according to a fixed schedule. So for your first 3 years of employment, you step up once every year. And then after that, it's one step every 2 years. And after that, one step every 3 years until eventually you hit a step 10. The last thing that I guess I'll mention is that with regard to pay is that your remuneration is composed of both a base pay amount, which is the same for everyone in that grade and step everywhere. So every GS13 step 5, for example, makes the same amount. But because cost of living is different, and somebody working in the Bay Area has to, hustle a lot more probably to make ends meet than somebody working in Peoria, there's a locality pay adjustment that is thrown on top of that base pay. And so, for example, in San Francisco, I think it's 35%. Most places, it's probably around 15% of your base pay that gets tacked on again to that. So what I wanted to here is show you guys real quick a couple of idiosyncrasies about this process, because again, I think it's a little arcane. So USA Jobs is the website where you go to apply for any job in the federal government, and they'll have you create a profile. And then once you've created a profile, that kind of you'll post up a resume, and there's like proof of citizenship forms and stuff that you have to get in there. Then you can just query in the database for all of the different jobs that are available. Something you can, so just punch in here, data science, and you're gonna get many hits, right? 1,175 jobs. If you start scrolling through this, the first thing that would jump out to me anyway is that, like, oh, executive science advisor, physical scientist, like none of these actually say data science. The reason for that is that in 2019, OPM issued a memo that basically said data science is in order to be successful as a data scientist in the federal government, it requires domain-specific knowledge. And so they don't have a classification for data science jobs as such. Rather, there are a number of different jobs that all kind of have data science elements that are intrinsic to them. So probably, you know, one of the big ones is going to be operations research analyst. So that's, it's a series 1515. And I've got a slide here in a second that I'll show you guys that captures what some of the biggies are. But so if you don't know that, you might not find the jobs you're looking for. But here's a couple of things. So if you look at down here where it says operations research analyst, Homeland Security investigation, starting at 79,468, GS 1314. A couple things that might throw you off there. So this starting at figure for this job anyway, that's the starting step 1 salary for a GS 13 without a locality adjustment. So if you don't know that and you're just looking here and you think maybe like, boy, that seems really low, they want me to live in Washington, DC, I can't do that. With a locality adjustment on there, that I think actually works out to about 103, 104 as the starting pay for a GS 13. Something else to know. So I feel like when you're applying in the private sector and you submit a resume, there's a lot of advice that's like, oh, keep it to a page, keep it to 2 pages. That is not the case when you're applying here through USA Jobs. You want to be absolutely voluminous, and you want to pare it back as much of the language in this responsibilities section on a job as you possibly can. And the reason for that is that the people who make the hiring decision will probably never see your resume otherwise, because so many different applications come in and they're not reviewed at that level first. They go through a kind of vetting process with the Civilian Human Resources Agency, where they're just looking for a keyword match on the responsibilities before they recommend resumes over to the actual hiring panel. So forget everything you've ever learned about resumes, put everything you've got in there, and make sure that you've looked at this section and done keyword matches, because otherwise nobody's going to read your resume to begin with. The other thing to know is that they're going to ask you a series of survey questions that are, again, going to be based around these responsibilities, where they're going to give you a kind of 5-point Likert scale and say, in your job that you work in now, are you someone who does this a little bit, some of the time, all of the time? Are you the expert everyone consults? And the thing I would encourage you to do without lying is to be the expert, see yourself as the expert, promote yourself as the expert, because again, the people who vet these resumes at the first level, not the people who make the hiring decisions, are going to hand off the resumes that have self-identified as experts in all of these functional areas. And your goal as you're going through this is to get to the interview stage of that process, because they're not going to see the results of that survey. They're not going to know about any of the things that you did within the USA Jobs site unless you've matched up and made it over that first hurdle. So those are, I think, the big things. I promised here, like the series that I think are the most data science-y within the federal space, and I've kind of listed those out here. Remember that the pay tables may or may not include locality when you look at them on the USA jobs. So you probably want to cross-check those figures before you rule a position out. They're going to say on there that they're not promotable positions because of what I talked about, that, you know, a position, if OPM has designated it as being a particular grade, that's what the position is. But once you're in the federal government, you can apply for other jobs and move around pretty fluidly, which is the way that people get promoted in that space. And then again, with regard to the resume, just make sure that you get those word matches in there. Promote yourself as the expert. And if you do those things, I think there's a very good chance that you will get into the federal space if it's something that interests you, because we desperately need more data scientists. So that's everything I got, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Wow. That's very cool. It would have been helpful to know this stuff a year and a half ago.
Well, yeah, if anybody thinks of questions or wants to get with me offline too, I'm happy to do anything that I can to, you know, help you negotiate this process or give you tips or recommendations. So thanks for the time.
All right, thanks so much. Irina, if you'd like to go next, please.
Oh, hello, Erwin. I'm sorry, but I don't have anything to present tonight. I'm just attending and want to find out what is going on, and maybe I will have something for next time.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lavon, your turn, please. Lavon, are you there? I think we might have lost him. Okay. Excuse me, Farzad, are you available?
Hey, actually, I don't have anything to present either. I'm just listening into others' presentations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. William Hoist, anything for us? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I go by Andy.
Oh, my mistake. I apologize. Andy.
No problem at all.
All right.
Yeah. So I'll just share a real quick thing here. Give me 1 second. And let's see here. How do I? Okay. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay. So I wasn't actually planning on presenting anything tonight, but I actually just saw an announcement this morning that I figured I'd share with the class. And it has to do with, you know, how I think as Northwestern, we're prepared in specific ways and in academic ways. And then I think there are as a whole other world out there in terms of what resources are available. And the announcement that happened today was actually on Google's blog. They announced opening up their platform and Cloudera services for through early November. So through November 6th, there's going to be a availability for a month to enroll in whatever training they have already available on their cloud services, and also participate in any Cloudera training that's related to the Google Cloud as well. And so just in terms of why that's important is, you know, they have given IT certifications a highlight within the blog. And this was a survey that they published that showed that the Google certified professionals are two of the top paid certifications that you can get out there for the data engineer and a cloud architect. So it's actually, you'd think it used to be AWS that was really kind of the go-to certification for cloud professionals, but now Google is made it to 1 and 2 on the list. So the only other thing I really wanted to share with the whole class is that there is a link that you can go to. And if you Google it, the free training 2021, it should be able to get that. And I can also drop this in the chat box. But that's really what I wanted to share because it seemed like a really exciting opportunity. Our team is using Google Cloud for the collecting our data, and then hopefully we'll be able to build, on top of the BigQuery information that's already available, lots of public information. We're going to use some census information that's just right in BigQuery, and that's one of the different repositories and different services that you can use Google Cloud for. With the service, there's a lot of free computation that you can get, and you can also pay. Everything has a certain amount, but you get quite a few services for free. And when you sign up, you get a year worth of they basically give you some free money to use to learn what the different products are. So with that, I will answer any questions, and I'll drop this hyperlink in the chat box for anyone interested.
That was
Thank
a
you
really
for
great impromptu. Oh, sorry.
No,
That was a really. Go ahead, Logan.
Aaron, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Andy, that was a great impromptu presentation. Thank you very much. All right, Logan.
No, I was saying thank you for sharing that, Andy. Are you surprised when you looked into that the AWS equivalent positions paid less than the others? Do you think that there is an oversupply maybe of the AWS stuff as more companies look at the multi-cloud approach and not really as many people have focused on per se GCP? Or really, I mean, GCP is the third leading one at this point, behind Azure, and of course AWS is number 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the answer to that, but I do think that in terms of products, the Google's invested very heavily in marketing their product, and there may be something to that. And I don't know exactly where the survey itself, how much it actually tells the truth, where their data came from. But certainly is a up and comer when it comes to cloud services, and I do know they're investing very heavily in making sure their name is out there and that they're actually a competitor in the space.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anyone who wants to present who has not yet presented? I think I called everyone's names, but I just want to be sure. Okay. Does anyone have any questions that they thought of as like a follow-up that they didn't think of initially? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. If the presenters could please email me your slides, if you had any, just so we can put them up for future reference somewhere on Canvas. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions or issues. But thank you all for joining us tonight. This has been a really interesting presentation.
And one more thing I would add, if anybody's still curious, I know you've seen, our group here at the school. I'm a part of the SLC still. And we are having a nonprofit speak tomorrow at noon. If nobody's gotten the link to that tomorrow and is interested in attending, I do believe you can get a few bonus points from Dr. Wedding as well if you attend that and write a short little summary, or a thought paper. So if you're looking for additional bonus, that is one other opportunity for everyone here.
Cool. Aaron, can you drop your email in the chat box?
Oh, yep. Let me do that right now. All right. It should be up there. I apologize. I'm doing this from my phone, so it didn't go through as a link. But it's
No worries. I got it.
pretty straightforward. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Great job, Erin. Thank you for hanging with me there and, leading this. You did a great job, and hopefully I wasn't cutting you off there too much at the end. I'm sorry about that.
That was funny. It was like the whole which way are you going on this kind of dance? No problem at all. It happens especially on Zoom meetings.
Oh, I tell you, that's crazy what you texted me there. That's like,
I swear to God, it's like they read the last 2 years of my life and were like, let's just do TED Talks about Erin's life.
oh man.
So the only thing that didn't apply was the ImportYeti, which was fascinating,
That
and
was.
the Go language. And
Oh,
that
man.
was everything else was oh yeah, this part of Erin's life. Oh yeah, this part of Erin's life. What the
That had to
heck?
be incredible on being on the
getting a
Bloomberg
little
campaign.
freaked
I can't imagine.
I was
Wow.
getting a little freaked out.
I'm surprised that he pulled up and had that stuff from the Bloomberg terminal. That stuff usually is very much lock and key, even demonstrating things to my knowledge. So it's okay.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but sir, really? All right, that's a choice.
Hey, you're giving people exposure to something they're not going to see. So,
Right? I should have been taking screenshots.
I'm about to say you could get some bonus points there from the Bloomberg folks, I'm sure.
Oh my God. No thanks. I'm not into that. I like my new government job.
There you go. Okie doke. So if you're just going to get those emails from folks and you kind of know who went and stuff, I guess that's all we have to do is just email Don and then let him know how it went.
I've been typing this up or writing this down longhand, but I'll type it up and send out a little summary to you and Don. Feel free to add anything. And that, then we should be, do you want me to send it to you first before we send it on to Don?
That's fine as well. Yeah. And then I can add some notes if you want me to, but other than that, I trust you just to write whatever. I'm sure you're going to have everything. So.
Well, it's basically, I've been just jotting down what they spoke on.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of people who were here for questions, but then didn't present, or the one guy, I don't know if he wanted to present and just dropped off for some reason or what happened there. So
I didn't know if we're supposed to, is he giving points to folks that just showed up? I couldn't remember if there was just minimal points for that or if it was.
No, I'd have to look in my emails for that, but that is why I was marking down if they were presenting or not.
Right. No, that's great. And then I think Andy had something last minute he put together, and that was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, nice little impromptu presentation there.
No, for sure. Yeah, if you need anything, Erin, just let me know. I'll be on the lookout for that email. And like I say, this was phenomenal. We got it done in an hour, which is not too long. And
I think it was
good showing. For sure. Okie dokie.
All right. Thanks, Logan.
Have a good evening. Take care.
Bye-bye.